Our final briefing is focused on the New York City Local Law 10, right? And if you're all ready, I think our briefer is ready.
Right, good morning, everyone. My name is Vasu Jayanthi, and I'm honored today to be presenting the final briefing on behalf of the Local Law 10 Workshop Group. Going to begin by contextualizing the environmental problem that our bill seeks to address, and then we'll get into Local Law 10, its goals, and the structure and logistics of the program that we've built around it. Then we're going to go through a sample task in the program to see how it would play out on the ground, and then we'll finish with some key takeaways. So we all remember how just 2 months ago we saw large parts of our city's infrastructure overwhelmed by rainfall, which led to severe flooding. Several subway lines stopped operating, and in some places people were up to their waists in contaminated stormwater. The parts of the city that were most affected lie in what the city refers to as environmental justice areas, which they define as low-income or minority communities living in the city. And one such community that was particularly affected by this flooding was The Hole, a 12-block area located on the border between Brooklyn and Queens. The Hole received 7 inches of rain on September 29th, nearly double the area's monthly rainfall, leading to building damages and preventing vehicle access. This low-lying area was once an industrial area that was built on top of an old salt marsh, but it's since been haphazardly converted to a residential area, and so it's not connected to either of the city's main stormwater drainage systems. Most of the Hole's 4,500 residents are racial minorities, and 22% of them live under the poverty line, making this an environmental justice area according to the city's definition. The area is also particularly sensitive to the urban heat island effect, where dark urban surfaces absorb heat and re-radiate it, making cities hotter than their surroundings. The Hole is just one of many communities in New York that stands to benefit from investments in stormwater and heat mitigation. New York City has identified 1,290 environmental justice areas, shown in blue on the map here. Many of them faced severe flooding on September 29th, as rainfall greatly exceeded the amount of water that existing drainage systems are equipped to handle. And this won't be the last time that New York City communities see this kind of flooding, with climate change expected to cause more severe and frequent storm events in coming years. And one way that New York City has been working to combat environmental issues and build up its resilience to climate change is through urban green infrastructure, also known as UGI, which includes structures like bioswales and small parks. UGI is a major pillar of Plan NYC, which is the citywide sustainability initiative first launched in 2007. That led to 2012's $3.5 billion green infrastructure program, and in 2017, the city also passed Local Law 60 and 64 to help incorporate environmental justice into city-led initiatives. So now, Local Law 10 of 2023 builds upon those existing policies. It was passed unanimously by the New York City Council in January, and it directs city agencies to survey opportunities for new UGI in city-owned vacant lots, with the goals of generating data that can help expand residents' access to UGI, particularly in underserved communities, improving the city's water and air quality, and reducing its heat burden. Local Law 10 sets the stage for future deployment of UGI, like the examples that are shown up here. Such installations can complement traditional gray infrastructure like sewers and storm drains to help mitigate the environmental problems that communities like The Hole are experiencing. So to help structure the Local Law 10 program to be as effective as possible, we took the perspective of the city at the time that the bill was passed, and then we looked at the mandates of the bill. So it stipulates that the mayor's office should designate an agency to lead the Local Law 10 initiative. Out of the Department of Environmental Protection, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Parks and Recreation, we assume that the lead agency is going to be DEP because it's already led most of the city's UGI initiatives, including the Green Infrastructure Program. The remaining agencies will play a role in supporting the program. We then designated a process for prioritizing sites to be surveyed, which we're calling our environmental impact approach. This option calls attention to sites with the highest rates of environmental problems, where small UGI installations have the most potential to effectively address those problems. So assuming that our program begins immediately in 2023, we set up the first year in 2 primary phases. Phase 1, the initial review and identification of sites, takes place from January to April with time built in at the beginning for planning. And Phase 2, the site level analysis and reporting, that is the main survey itself, takes place from May to December. So phase 1 contains 4 critical steps. First is forming the joint task force, which will be headed up from a new hire out of DEP, which is the local Law 10 program manager. That's going to enable the consolidation of existing data on city-owned lots from agencies like DCAS and parks. And then community involvement is an important part of environmental justice, and so we've made it an important part of our program design as well. So a key step in this phase is going to be surveying community members to better understand residents' desires for UGI. The data collected in all of those steps is going to inform the creation of a list of priority sites for more in-depth surveying in phase 2, which also contains 4 critical steps. First is the collection of community-level data through community board meetings and town halls in priority sites that fall in environmental justice areas. Then we're going to have site-level collection of environmental and land use data leveraging existing city resources. That is the primary survey. And then all of that data is going to inform a draft report with recommendations around the potential for UGI in each priority site. After its completion in December, this draft report is going to be circulated for feedback before April 2024, when the final report must be submitted up to the mayor as mandated by the bill. So who is responsible for each of these steps? The organizational chart shown here reflects the key deliverables and who is involved in each task. So at the bottom of the hierarchy are officers and analysts from the 4 key agencies who are responsible for actually surveying the lots and compiling the environmental and land use data. They're going to report that data up to the Joint Task Force, which is a committee led by the local Law 10 program manager and responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations of the program and coming up with priority sites and UGI recommendations. The Joint Task Force will send their recommendations to the next step up, which is the executive leadership team, which comprises the leads of the 4 key agencies, who will approve the program budget and calendar, and ultimately send the final report to the mayor's office, which will then review and circulate the final report in addition to overseeing the entire project. I do want to note here that besides the program manager, all of the scientists, analysts, agency leads, and other city staff who are working on local Law 10 are existing city employees, and so the personnel cost to the city is low. Moving on to funding, the total estimated budget for local Law 10 is $830,000, with about 3/4 allocated for staffing and 1/4 for other than personal services. This money draws from DEP's existing funding in addition to the expense budgets of the 3 other city agencies, as well as the large green infrastructure program budget, which means that local Law 10 overall poses a small fiscal impact on the city as well. So to illustrate a task in our program structure, let's take a look at the survey process for this vacant lot that's located in the hole. Our goal here is to survey this lot's environmental and land use characteristics to recommend specific UGI installations. In a place like the hole that doesn't have a proper stormwater drainage system, green infrastructure can provide an effective interim solution and reduce the burden on existing gray infrastructure. Specifically, a bioswale or rain garden that's pictured on the right here is a green space specially designed with plants and soil that can help to reduce flooding during storms by absorbing rainwater into the ground. In addition to managing stormwater, bioswales have the co-benefits of filtering out pollutants and beautifying a neighborhood, having positive impacts for residents' health. However, they can also collect trash and pests and lead to basement flooding if they're not properly implemented and maintained. So these are some of the considerations that our research analysts and scientists will be thinking about when they go to survey this lot during phase 2 of our program. They're going to be collecting data on variables such as the size of the lot, water volume capture, soil porosity and pH, and community needs in order to better understand the viability of installing a bioswale here. They'll then send that data to the Joint Task Force, who will make a final recommendation about UGI options that would be appropriate here, along with cost and feasibility considerations and the community needs and priorities. The survey data and recommendations will be captured in the final report, which will be circulated throughout the city next year, helping community advocates and local representatives to push for funding to install UGI that can address the environmental hazards that the whole faces. These are all issues that New York City holistically has to contend with: severe flooding, intense heat, and poor air quality among them. Events like the rainfall that we experienced on September 29th, the heat wave that we saw at the beginning of the semester, these will only become more frequent and more intense as climate change worsens. Investing in urban green infrastructure offers a localized and context-specific way to mitigate these problems while also supporting community needs and offering co-benefits for residents' health. UGI isn't going to solve every issue that communities are facing, but neighborhoods like the whole need this kind of investment as a starting point in order to avoid further environmental degradation and to ensure a livable community. done using a thoughtful approach that incorporates both environmental and community needs, making sure that communities are involved throughout every step of the decision-making process. Our program structure for Local Law 10 is a low-cost option that can produce valuable data to help plan future UGI and make our city more sustainable and more equitable. Thank you to the entire Leave It to Nature team for your support throughout the semester, and especially to our faculty advisor, Professor Rosen, our manager, Sonali, and our deputy manager, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure to work with you all for the past few months, and thank you all for your time. I'm happy to take questions now.
Vasu, excellent work to you and your team. As a native New Yorker, thank you so much for bringing so much attention to this very important issue. I wanted to ask you and your team, after 2 semesters of comprehensive work and analysis, what other neighborhoods besides the whole would you guys like to see prioritized for future UGI development?
So there's 1,290 environmental justice areas, so there are a lot of communities that would benefit a lot from this kind of support. Another neighborhood that we looked at in detail is Hunts Point in the South Bronx because of their extreme air quality and urban heat issues. Another one is southern Queens that has a lot of coastal flooding. It was devastated during Hurricane Ida. So those are the ones that come to mind immediately, but there's tons to be looking at. Thank you.
Well, first, let's congratulate all 5 briefers for excellent briefings. And I want to review a little bit of what we've learned and why we put you through all of this over the last 2 semesters. So I know that in many respects we focused on the content of these briefings, and they were really well presented. And in fact, one of the exercises of the past 2 semesters is to learn how to communicate very complicated problems and programs in 10 minutes. That is an extraordinarily important skill in a policy area like environment and sustainability, because these issues are complex, they require many disciplines communicating with each other, and the skill of bringing together a group to focus on these issues is one of the things that you have learned. These 2 semesters are as much about process as about the actual content, because we don't know what the next environmental problem is going to be, and you don't know which ones you're going to be working on. Now, next semester, we get much more small-scale policy problems and management problems to work on for clients. We don't get something as large as putting in place a new program, but by putting in place a new program, you get to think about every aspect of program management and policy analysis. What should we do? What's the issue? What's the science behind the issue? Now, the thing about environmental issues is inevitably there's a scientific dimension to it. And very often in this world of leaders who are scientifically illiterate, one of your jobs is going to be to explain the basic science. Every one of these briefings just did that. Now, you take it for granted because you've been doing it for the last 2 semesters, but somebody walking in off the street would not take it for granted. The other thing that you've developed over the last 2 semesters, and I give you all enormous credit for how well you've done this, is you've learned to work together in groups under tight deadlines and produce. Now, you're already in classes with other people that haven't gone through these processes. You're probably in some groups, and you're wondering, where's the work plan? Who's in charge here? How do we get this thing to happen? Why isn't everybody participating? Who are these free riders? What's going on around here? And so you have group skills and team skills that you should not underestimate that are very important. You also know how to structure work and think about work, which is another basic team management skill. So we've gone through these 2 semesters, working together, not always agreeing with each other, but somehow managing at the end of 2 semesters to produce what I would say are high-quality, excellent professional briefings that if you're in the world of work and you're doing this work all the time and you see these, you know, this is better than most of what you see professionally. Those of you who have had professional experiences, I think if you step back and compare this to the stuff you saw at work, this stuff's better, okay? I'm telling you, it's better. I do this all the time. Many of the faculty here do this all the time, and we're always impressed and amazed by how well you do when it gets to this point of the semester. So like I said, next semester will be different. We don't get to decide as much because it's the client that decides. The problems will be smaller scale and more focused, but the basic skills that you've learned in presentation and group dynamics and in work planning will hold and will be helpful to you. You have to design your own outputs going forward. In other words, we gave you that structure in the summer and fall. In the spring, you have to figure out what the outputs are. But the intellectual activity is you ask yourself, okay, what are the interim outputs before we get to the final report? And so that very exercise allows you to cut the problem down to size and actually start making the work happen. One of my favorite videos of our alums from the program is one of our alums is saying, well, my work life is like a series of workshop projects. That's what I do here. And that's really true. I mean, I feel that way about my work as a professional. It's like, where's the work plan? Who's the team? Who's in charge here? What's the deadline? When are we getting this stuff done? So don't underestimate how important that process is and what you now know how to do, and you've just demonstrated really effectively. So I want to congratulate you all on a job well done. The workshop faculty for the next semester has your survey results, and we have your top 10 list that Maya provided to us, and they're busy looking for projects that we hope will be interesting and important. The first day of workshop next semester, the faculty will present the projects to you. You'll get to rank order your preferences, and we're off to the races for next semester. So again, congratulations really on a job well done. Let's hear it for everybody.